All right. Have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So action items. We've got the issuance of the Series 2024 bonds. Sally and Stephen Geis from Davenport. Good morning.
Welcome back. This is Stephen Geis from our financial advisor Davenport. He's here to talk about an opportunity to refinance our Series 2015 bonds.
Nice to see you all again. So I'm here on behalf of Davenport and my senior colleagues, David Rose and Courtney Rogers, who are both traveling today, but really appreciate the opportunity to be here to talk about this potential refunding of the 2015 bonds. So flipping to page 1 here, as financial advisor, we maintain a database of all of our clients' outstanding debt. And so that's regularly updated for market conditions. And we monitor that as an early warning system, if you will, for potential refundings for debt service savings. And so typically, when we're looking at a refunding for debt service savings. So when we're looking at a refunding for debt service savings, we typically, the benchmark for the industry is 3% on a net present value basis. And so the 2015s are showing in excess of 3% currently, as y'all will see in a minute. And on top of that, the bonds are callable on January 1 of 25. And so what that means is, based on current regulations, we can refund those bonds on a tax exempt basis as long as we're within 90 days of the call date. So that's another key consideration and is why I'm in front of you all today. So flipping to page 2 here. This gives you an overview of the 20-year AAA tax exempt rate over the last 20 years, essentially since 2000 on the left. And as you can see, especially over the last 18 months, if you will, rates have gone up since the historic lows that we saw during and after the pandemic. However, when you compare them to historic levels, they are still favorable. And so flipping to page 3, there's a lot going on here, but I think I do want to point out that the 1 year, the 5 year, and the 10-year lines there, so that the municipal curve has been inverted. But as you can see over the summer, really, we've seen some disinversion, if you will, on the front end of the curve. So that's sort of a glimpse of where we are today with rates. Moving to page 4 here, there's a lot of information on this page, so we'll step through it. The 2015 bonds have roughly $87.5 million of callable par outstanding. We're looking to refund roughly 79 million of that via the 2028 through 2045 maturities. The 26 and 27s carry a 3% coupon, so they currently aren't showing savings at the moment. However, we will continue to monitor those to see if they're worth including. But based on current market rates as of August 20th, we're showing net budgetary savings of roughly $7.5 million, which equates to roughly 6.7% on an NPV basis. So that's well above that industry standard benchmark. And so in that blue box down there, you'll see that we're roughly 46 basis points. So that means the market could move roughly 46 basis points up, meaning rates could go up 46 basis points, and we'd still meet that 3% threshold. So the cash flow savings there on the right, the first column is your existing debt service. The second column is the estimated refunding debt service based on current market rates, and then the third column there is the difference between the two. So in total, you're looking at roughly $7.5 million of savings based on current markets today. So flip into page 5 here. Our recommended approach for pursuing this refunding would be via competitive sale. And that's the same methodology that you all have used for the past several bond sales. And that's our recommendation just due to the size of the refunding, as well as the authorities, y'all's outstanding AAA credit rating. So moving on to page 6, the next steps, and I know I'm going quickly, so if you have any questions, please feel free to stop me. But August 28th, that's today. Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we would be asking for a motion to put this in front of the full board at the September 12th meeting. So following that, we would meet with the credit agencies at the end of September, followed by a bond sale at the beginning of October. That's when we would actually lock in the rates on the day of pricing. And then we would close by October 23rd. So with that, that's really all I wanted to run you all through. Happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Question, Chair.
Yeah.
Ask one first.
Yeah, sure. Please,
Okay.
yeah. go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. Just trying to follow along in the material, the sort of bound little handout.
Yeah.
Recommended approach is a competitive sale.
Yeah.
With that being emphasized as the method of sale.
Yes.
When you're reading the write-up, I wasn't totally clear on the recommended motion is resolution. Oh, I might be on the wrong thing. Hold on a second. I guess my question is the competitive sale and you line up the characteristics of a competitive.
Sure,
sale.
sure.
Could you
Let-
go over those?
Yeah, sure. Let me talk you through it. So when we're issuing bonds in the public market, there are really two main ways of doing it. There's a negotiated sale and a competitive sale. So in a negotiated sale, you engage the underwriter up front on your behalf and they go out and sell the bonds to the investors. In a competitive sale, you put the offering document out to a pool of underwriters and they bid competitively, and whoever has the lowest interest rate ultimately wins the transaction.
Okay.
So it incentivizes competition amongst them.
And then I think I was on the right page when in the packet
Mhm.
because the motion says approve the resolution to refund the outstanding bond series 2015 and then move forward with the sale. But that is not the competitive sale method is not specified in the motion. Am I reading that correctly?
We can update the motion.
Okay. Does it matter?
It makes it clear.
Okay.
Yeah, we
Okay,
can
thank
certainly
you.
add that. Yep.
Talk a little bit more about the timing, and I'm going to ask the question. The Fed has started to make noise that interest rates might start to move down and come down a quarter of a point. Some are saying half a point. I doubt it'll be half a point, but see, it's a quarter of a point when they haven't moved in a while. So
Sure. Yeah, so there has been a lot of talk about that.
Yeah.
And so all the indications that we're seeing is that it would be in September, but
Yeah.
nobody really knows. And on top of that, with everything going on in the world and the election, I mean, either way the election goes, there may be volatility that follows that. So the reason why we're trying to get into the market in October is to sort of hit that sweet spot, if you will, before the election. Before a lot of uncertainty comes into play. And it also may be enhanced by potential Fed cuts.
Ready for motion. I can read motion.
One question.
Sure.
The reference is an indenture is this goes back to the early nineties and it's revised since then. Is that in the library somewhere? I was kind of, as I was geeking out, I was kind of looking for it.
I
Curious.
can't remember off the top of my
Okay.
head, but we can confirm. Yeah, I think we're up to
Yeah, just,
19 or so.
Okay,
Yeah.
We're supposed to know about it, so.
Yeah, it's from 92, I believe is the
92,
first one.
okay.
Yes, and I think we've done 18 or 19 since then. So yes, we'll confirm if that's in the
All right,
library
thanks.
and point that to you.
It's still with US Bank Trust.
Yes.
Right, I'm ready for a motion.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks.
Sure. I move the recommendation to the board to approve the attached resolution to refund the outstanding bond series 2015 be adopted and staff along with the financial advisors move forward with the competitive sale of the series 2024 water and sewer system refunding revenue bonds.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Hey.
Approved.
Do we want Terry to? Terry, do you want to vote aye?
I don't know that I can.
Oh, you're not on the committee. I'm sorry. I forgot. I thought he was.
Should have asked
Sorry.
me
It's all
any
right.
questions. That's right. All right. On to.
Yes.
Dolly, we'll move on to the mid-year budget. results.
Stephen, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Really
coming up.
appreciate it.
Okay, yes. The next item on the agenda is the report on the mid-year budget review results. So here's our agenda. We're just going to talk about the background, process, results, key indicators, and next step. So we presented you with a conservative operating budget that had total revenues of 177 million and total expenses of 167 million. Our capital spending plan was approved at 148 million. We continued cost saving measures for controllable costs, and we always exercise prudent financial planning. Our process is that we evaluated revenues, expenses, and capital expenditures through June, and it's a great process. Thank you to everyone in the back and all the cost center owners online. I get these fun facts when they give me their variances back, like algae bloom on the Potomac caused chemical usage to increase, or what items are moving out of inventory. So I really appreciate the fun reads. Thank you, everyone. And then we took those and we projected operating results and capital expenditures through year end. As a big recap, if you don't want to listen to anything else I say, operating revenues are expected to come in at about 104% of budget projections. Operating expenses will be slightly below budget. Non-operating revenues, that's where our availability fees sit. Those will come in above budget estimates. Non-operating expenses, that's our interest expense, will come in below estimates. And we have funding available for our capital expenditures, and we'll use this experience when developing our 2025 budget. All right, here's the numbers. So sale of water and disposal charges, that's our bread and butter. That's going to be 65% of our total revenues. Those are projected to come in over budget for the year. Essentially due to the user rate was factored into the budget, but our demand has been really high this year. It's 1% over the usage from last year. And then that was a dry year. So that was 4% over higher than the year before that. So it's essentially usage, why we're going to come in on those line items.
So that's related to transition.
Yeah, plus I was looking back at the rate model, and the old model factored in a reduction in water usage, and we really haven't seen that. So I think those two factors, because we do try to set our budget in line with the rate model. So then the dry year plus that assumption. Yeah, I mean, it's a good problem to have. But
Yeah.
I would say, is it? Because looks good from a revenue point of view, but really if usage is up and you have weather conditions that are drought-like, that's not good. So when you say it's a good thing, it's a good thing from a revenue picture.
Thank you for clarifying. In fact, when we turn to the expenses, you'll see that increased purchases for the water that we've had to buy.
I think Chair, if you're okay with this type of statement, not to interrupt your
No,
presentation,
please.
but the indicators that show us what's happening with consumption related to our operations, it can create a very compelling argument for either communication to our customers or an operational decision about how to move forward in drought-like conditions. So I'm always listening for that type of thing.
Yeah, and if you do actually pull up our website, you'll see that Sue Crosby's team and communications team do put out about the drought monitoring, effective
Sure.
usage of water, leak monitoring. I know that we send out notices if consumption is out of line. The customers get a call or a note at the door about high usage. So we do those things in the regular course of business.
Thank you.
Mhm. The other two categories there, other water and wastewater fees, are also going to come in at or above budget. So that middle line, their operating revenues, that's the 104% above budget that I referenced. Availability charges, again, our connections are really strong, so we're going to increase that projection. I have another slide on that. So our budget was at 2645. I reached out to land development and data center connections that we know about. So we're going to increase that to 2918 for the year. I still think we're going to hit that. So I don't think we'll have any problem hitting that increased number. And then interest income there, investment income is expected to be above budget also. Again, we budgeted conservatively, right? Not knowing where interest rates would go.
And regarding those ERCs, is some of that the dynamic of data centers trying to get in before these policies and rules
So that's
come into
not
place?
even, we didn't even factor that into this increase. So it's possible that
Oh,
we will see that spike again at the year end like we do.
what do we think's driving this increase? We have an idea?
What? Go ahead.
I don't want to interrupt.
I was just gonna say this year is especially high because we had not as an expansion of service that wasn't budgeted for. So that hit in April and is noted on your financials. Google? I
Yeah,
can't remember.
Google was expanding within an existing facility. So they made an additional large increment of capacity purchase.
Okay. So is that predominantly what's being reflected here, just Google?
That's one of the very large factors in the chart that I think you'll see later in the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There was a statement already, I think it was attributed to someone that's not correct, but I think it was the Piedmont Environmental Council. Somebody was raising concerns that the data centers are using too much water. And we know some of these data centers are air cooled, not all water, and we have reused water. Who had any inquiries or pushback at all from the outside agencies somewhere saying, hey, are these data centers sucking up too much water?
Yeah, interestingly, we saw, many of those same comments, and in around that same time, we had a meeting with several folks from the Piedmont Environmental Council. They had asked questions and, we've known them for years. So we had a meeting with them and it was very, very helpful. I think it was very enlightening for them. We approached it and gave them a, presentation of just how we go about our planning and kind of a bigger picture. And I think that was really helpful. We had a similar conversation with county staff from community planning and zoning yesterday. Actually, similar. There's a lot of conversation about data center these days. And so we've talked with ICPRB. So there's been quite a few conversations. And I think it's just helpful to provide that additional context for exactly what you're saying. I think, sometimes those perceptions, come up, particularly as we've had the weather we've had, but we've had a lot of good conversations lately. I think have been helpful.
Yeah, data centers are in the bullseye right now, so
Yeah.
every aspect of it being reviewed.
Yep.
Criticized.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would just maybe add a few additional words to the nature of the discussion we had with Piedmont. There is a lot of concern, especially the localities surrounding us, where I think this organization has been afforded a lot of great planning for resilience in our reclaim system to help offset those demands and all of the storage and again, resilience that we've built up. And so these other communities that are now being inundated with the data center industry are not quite as well prepared and that don't have that time to plan. And so I think it was very insightful in the discussion for us to be able to share that about our organization with Piedmont Environmental Council. And they were very attuned to wanting to know how those conversations they could take back to those other localities and help them learn from what we've seen over the past couple of decades here.
And I think there's a lot of perception that the data centers, there's a lot of money involved and they're just growing and using the resources, without much thought. And I think in all of the work we've been doing with them, both particularly on the water side, but the power, we've learned a lot about their own incentives to be really looking at the kinds of technology and how they're, using and efficiency. They have their own sustainability goals. I think they're doing more than what what people would think. And so, we can sort of share that experience of what we've learned from them.
Yeah.
We've actually had data center partners approach us about partnering to support, they call it, what replenishment initiatives. So supporting capital programs that we have that might be deemed as replenishing water, so as an example, helping with storage projects like the quarry, and we have another project on the books to do some dredging in Goose Creek to help increase storage there. And those are examples of things we shared with Piedmont about how we could partner with the industry to support, a balance.
Thank you. All right, Sally. Thanks.
Okay, so this is just in words, what I just explained on the last slide. Okay, expenses, total bottom line there, we're projecting 98% of budget expenses. And then going line by line, personnel is coming in under. We were below estimate on lower than expected benefit costs, and we do delay filling open positions where we can. So we kind of wait till mid-year and then we fill those positions. Wholesale water, Mr. Yudd, that's where you're seeing is above estimate due to the increased demand. We've had to purchase more from Fairfax Water. Other materials and operating expenses will be at or below budget, and depreciation and amortization are expected to be at budget. And then interest expense will come in below budget estimates. Any questions on expenses? Capital expenditures, the team will present tomorrow to the committee, but preliminarily they're projecting it 88, I think it went down to 86 even of the original plan. So that'll be presented tomorrow at the CIP committee, and we do have existing funding to finance the plan. So some key indicators, through July, we added 2,299 connections that represented 87% of our budget. So talking to land development and our data center projection person, we are going to increase that projection to 2,918. When I looked on August 12th, we had added another 104, and 56% of those ERCs in 2024 so far are data centers. So the rest of those are the other categories. And then I thought this was interesting in the projections I got from the team. We're mostly projecting multifamily to come online between now and the end of the year. So that was the highest category. So we have continued permits, an increase in the customer base, and then we'll continue to monitor for the second half of 2024, though you'll see in my July numbers, we're in line with what we're talking about here. And we'll continue to evaluate efforts and cost saving opportunities as they come up, along with our prudent financial planning.
Do we consider 2/2 multifamily? The county used to not, and then they changed it, so they do now. I'm just curious if and maybe that's too geeky, but.
I think we do. I was actually just about to send a message to because I was curious myself. I had the exact same thought. Let you know.
Thanks.
I don't know. So the next steps is that we're preparing our operating and capital budget. That process has already started. They're actually due back to me next week, the 6th and the 9th. So we'll use this experience as the basis for our 2025 budget. We're going to present to you all at the October meeting. Capital spending will be presented at the joint meeting in November, and then the full board will be asked to approve the budget in December. We will review and update our 5-year plan of financing and present to the board in the first quarter of 2025.
Great.
Terry, do you have any questions?
Nope, it looks good to me.
Oh, Siri or Terry?
Siri.
Ah.
Terry's like, no, it's good.
Terry, no questions, Terry?
No questions, Sean.
Thanks. All right. Well, any questions?
I'm good.
Okay. Great. the quarterly investment review.
Quarterly investment and review, this was as of June. Our total portfolio was $340 million. And you can see we mostly had held US government agencies, and there's the other categories broken out there, what we held. There's our trends for the last couple quarters. So we've stayed around 340 million. Our average yield was 3.28%. And then the borrowing rates there are at the bottom, which will come into play when we put those bonds out to market. During the quarter ending June, we had 20 million mature, and there are the rate of returns that the yields that we got, the 4.71 and the 2.47, and then we purchased 45 million, and nice that we got a little higher yield on those. Our LGIP account is at 5.6% interest rates. So we'll continue to monitor those. I did just, as things roll off, you know, I invest them as we're going here. So we'll continue to monitor that and keep maintaining our liquid investments so that we have a good mix of assets. Oh, any questions on that?
Does, as the chairman here was saying, does the likelihood of the Fed starting to lower rates, is that factoring into our strategies here, or is it kind of just background noise?
Well, we don't want too much liquid funds, so we're going to reinvest it anyway. The rates are creeping down a little. The ones I invested yesterday, it's like 3.9%. And I was like, oh, where'd the 4% go? But we're going to still keep a good mix in the.
It's just background noise. It's not really.
I mean, we still have some in our portfolio that's point.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, we're pretty limited in what we can invest in. So the options are really short or long. And so we have, as you know, we have a challenging capital spending plan coming up. So we've been keeping a lot of cash shorter. So it's just kind of unfortunate for us, at least as far as investing goes, but good for, you know, a lot of the other things that we're trying to do. So.
Yeah, I agree.
And then these are July results. So again, they follow the trends that I just spoke about. Our revenues are higher than budget. Our expenses are under budget. Where does this one scroll? This one scrolls down. Would you mind just scrolling down to the, I wanted to show them the mix of the ERCs. Yep, thanks. There's our ERC trends, but we'll bump that line up. So next month you'll see the new projection on there. That we'll measure ourselves against. And then just one more slide. Oh, if you could just roll, there you go. So that blue bar at the bottom there is our data centers, and then the other mix on top. And there's how it's translating into availability fees at the bottom. And then our total cash and equivalents was 333 million, and the average yield was 3.24 as of July.
And Mr. Campbell, I did confirm that generally speaking, 2/2s are considered multifamily. It does have to do with how they are metered, but generally they're metered and considered multifamily.
Great, thank you.
Capital expending, you'll hear in detail about tomorrow. And then this is just the breakdown of how we break down availability fees, paying for it versus user fees. So that's July.
Energy program update.
Hey,
Thanks,
good
Valerie.
morning.
You're welcome.
So every year about this time, the asset management program provides you all with an update on what we're up to, what's new, sometimes various topics of interest that have come up throughout the year. So this year for our update, we're going to focus on providing you more details about the rehab and replacement strategies for our water and sewer infrastructure. The bulk of this presentation will be led by Kathleen Witten here. She is our asset management program manager. If you have not met Kathleen or haven't been familiar with her in the past, I think most of you know her. She has been around Loudon Water for about 12 years plus, and she's progressed through various departments in the organization, including land development, engineering, and now she runs our asset management department. I think you're going to find that she, it's very evident as she presents that she's very passionate about asset management and she's very detail oriented and really loves data and using data to make the best decisions for our organization. So I'm really excited for you all to see what she has to share today. Before we get into Kathleen's portion of the presentation, though, I just want to share a few highlights here for this group. So why we are deciding to share with you why R&R matters to the Finance Committee, to you all on this committee. R&R is really important to our financials. So, first and foremost, any rehab and replacement can affect our bottom line. So it's really important that you all are aware of what we're doing and how we're using our funds responsibly. You'll notice we have a lot of R&R projects in our CIP now. There'll be plenty more coming in the future, and those could ultimately affect borrowing. They come at a cost. And so we want to make sure we're making the right decisions at the right time and being responsible with the ratepayer dollars. Secondly, our credit rating. So we talked earlier about our AAA bond rating, which is excellent. We're very proud of that at Loudon Water. And our asset management presentation this time last year actually focused on our bond ratings and how asset management influences that rating. And you may recall, if you were here last year, that some of the questions that the rating agencies are asking us are about the condition of our linear infrastructure and how we plan to take care of that. Are we seeing a lot of problems? Do we have plans in place to make sure that we are replacing pipe that is aging? So these are really important factors that do affect our credit, and that's really important for us to share with you as well. And then finally, asset management and rehab and replacement is all over our strategic plan. Our mission and strategic goals definitely support the goals of asset management. That's what we're all about. It's protecting our infrastructure, keeping it sustainable for years to come. So it's really important from a strategic perspective. And I think you'll notice over the years that we continue to get better as we continue to improve and create new maintenance programs. As we continue to adopt technology, we are getting more and more information and getting better and better at asset management and ultimately planning for rehab and replacement. So you'll see a lot of that throughout this presentation as Kathleen digs into the details, but we're really excited to share this with you guys today.
Great, thanks, Jessica. Good morning, everybody. So I broke up this presentation into two separate things, basically one for water and one for sewer. So we'll start with the water side. So this is just a picture of a break that we had, pretty typical. So overall, our system, we have over 1,400 miles of water main. At the average pipe age is about 20 years old. And the key number on this slide is that we have 70 miles of cast iron pipe. So that's the yellow showing up in that map on the side. All the blue on that map is our ductile iron. So the majority of the system is ductile, but the older stuff is all cast. Our average annual break rate per 100 miles in the system overall is 1.4 breaks. And the industry average reported by AWWA is 20. So we're really doing rather well compared to our peers. So I wanted to start this presentation by talking about what we've done in the past. So we've done 3 separate water main replacement projects, 2 of which I presented to you probably 5 years ago. The 3 projects were all cast iron replacements. One of them was we replaced with plastic. We tried it out. We didn't like it. So the other 2 we replaced back with ductile or standby. That was just about 2 miles of replacement that we did. And this picture shows the trench. So these 2 projects we dug down, took out the existing pipe and put the new one right back in the same trench. we've also done 3 separate valve replacement projects through contractors. When we've done a bunch of valve repairs and replacements in-house in spots that we can do, but when the valves are in the middle of a really busy right of way or they're too large, we have a contractor do them. So the valve replacements are important because when we do have a water main break, if the valves aren't working, then more people are out of service. So the more we can have the valves working, the better it is for everybody. So there is one more valve replacement project in the CIP right now, and I think that'll be presented to you at the end of the year. As far as water main replacements, we have 2 or 3 in the CIP right now. We'll be adding another one this year.
Kathleen, for a valve replacement project, like how many valves would we do on something like that? Do you have a ballpark?
10 to 12 valves
Okay.
usually. The one coming up at the end of this year is more, because we're just gonna knock out all of the valves that need to be replaced.
Okay,
I think it's like 20.
okay.
Yeah. So here's some statistics. So the average age of our cast iron pipe is 52 years old. And it just so happens that the Utah Water Research Lab does a report every 5 years, I think. And the last time they did this report, they put out a statement that said the average age of failing water mains is 53. So we're right in there. You can see from the graph, it shows how old the pipe is and how many miles of that age of pipe we have. So about 70% of the cast iron pipes that we have are older than that 52-year average. So we're ripe for needing to be replaced. We're right at the failure rate.
Do we share our information with them? So like all our cast iron pipe, our failure rates, do we have our own average for when our cast iron fails?
I'm not sure that we share with Utah. We have shared with AWWA in the past, but
Okay.
it's not something that we do every year.
Okay. And then, ductile iron, I think we say it's 100-year life expectancy, something like that?
Yes,
What was our life expectancy?
what we thought it was.
Yeah, what did we think it was gonna be when we were putting this stuff in some years ago? Does
I'm
anybody know?
not sure that they thought about that at the time, but usually cast iron will last 75 years.
Okay,
The research that I did a few years ago showed that this kind of age of cast iron is failing prematurely for some reason. I
Hmm.
don't know if it was the manufacturer or how they put it in. I'm not really 100% sure, but a lot of different agencies are finding the same age by failing.
I had always heard 75 too, so it's interesting that this is falling short of that,
Yeah.
which then also makes me wonder, are we gonna fall short of our ductile life expectancies? Who knows, but,
That's okay.
okay, great.
How do we know when something is failed, it's just because water first time street or?
I would, yeah, so for the most part, it's a customer call-in that there's water in the street. Occasionally, it's like a police officer will drive by and see something. But for the most part, it's a customer call-in. But actually, I'm gonna talk about this a little further on. Some of our preventative maintenance is finding leaks, which are basically breaks, before they surface. So.
Do you use any kind of artificial intelligence programs or is that too early to?
Not specifically artificial intelligence, but we do have acoustic listening nodes that are out in the system all the time. And so they're listening for leaks in the high break areas.
Pretty advanced stuff.
Yeah. All right, so there's just some more stats. Basically everything that's breaking is mainly 6-inch diameter cast iron mains. So it's that specific portion of the system that's breaking. And you can see the miles of pipe that we have, that green. So half of all of the cast iron we own is 6-inch. So that's why it's starting to become a problem. That part is failing. So in 2017, we did a study with O'Brien and Gear to determine if corrosion was really what was causing these breaks, because at the time this Utah study hadn't come out. We didn't know everybody else was experiencing the same thing. So we had them look at Sterling Park, which is the oldest area where we have most of the breaks. And they did a soil survey on a bunch of different areas to determine where the most corrosive soil was. And then we picked 10 spots to dig down to the pipe and see how does it look. And so this is one of the pipes that they dug up, and you can see it looks pretty good. That's an 8-inch cast iron pipe, and it was installed in 1967. So they determined that corrosion was really not the issue, why we were having so many breaks. It's really based on the material and the minimal or lack of bedding around the pipe. It seems most of the breaks that we dig up, there's no bedding at all. So it really has to do with the installation method.
So when we're doing new ductile iron now, what's the standard for bedding those pipes now? If it's a new 6-inch pipe, what kind of bedding would we ask for?
We do bedding all the way around the pipe. So most jurisdictions only do the spring line, but we do, I think it's 3 inches under the pipe and then to the top of the pipe. So the whole thing is bedded. So hopefully you're not getting any rock intrusion or anything else, and keeps the corrosive soils away from the pipe as much as possible too.
And what kind of material is that? When you,
Crushed stone,
okay, so it's like 21A kind of stuff or smaller or?
57 stone, I think.
Okay, yeah.
When you were talking about the 2017 study,
Mhm.
you were mentioning soil survey. And then could you just talk a little bit more about that? Like the locations to investigate further were driven by soil conditions first?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we did our soil study in a bunch of different locations. We were mainly using the hydrants as like our reference. And then we would go off of that and determine like how resistive is the soil. And we did that in a bunch of different spots, mainly near where we had the breaks, to determine which was the most corrosive. If there was going to be a corrosion problem, we figured that would be where we should look. And then based on those results, we dug down, I think it was 10 spots.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, to deal with this failure rate problem, we did a kind of brute force risk matrix prioritization to determine where we should be doing these projects. And that's how we ended up with the 2 projects in Sugarland Run that we replaced 5 years ago. And we were looking at, instead of doing that whole process manually every year, buying a piece of software to kind of tell us to have that AI kind of work in the water model, the whole thing. But when we were looking at the costs and what the software could actually give us, we kind of took a step back and we looked at this map and we said, we know where the breaks are. We really need to just start replacing. So every single one of these orange diamonds is a break that we've had historically. The green circles, I don't know if you can tell, those are valves that have failed. And so the blue is our water main. So you can see that, I don't know if this has a pointer. Yep. So this is Sterling Park right here. This is Sugarland Run. This is where the majority of our breaks are happening. And then this is Countryside. So Countryside's starting to have more breaks. So we've decided to just focus on this. So this is a dashboard that we created in-house with our GIS department, and it will show you all of the breaks and the work orders that are associated with those breaks. It also shows you the install year and the material. So yellow is cast, blue is ductile. So you can see we installed cast for about 20 years, from 1963 to 1983, thereabouts. But compared to the ductile iron installation, this is a small problem. So if we can figure out how to deal with the failures in cast, then when we get to the ductile, that's going to be a much bigger problem. Hopefully we'll have a better idea how to do that.
It's very interesting to see visually the location, and obviously the main driver is the age for the concentration in Sterling Park and Sugarland Run. But for the areas like that are more random to the west,
Yeah.
where the infrastructure is in some cases not that old at all, if,
Mhm.
you know, maybe even lower than your 19.9.
Yes.
What are some of the reasons that you have?
So this includes every break. So this could be a contractor hit.
Okay.
It could be the leaks that we detect with the acoustic listening. It could be a whole number of different things. It could be corrosion. So I have a slide on that coming up too.
Okay.
But yeah, you can see that we've had about 100 breaks in the last 5 years. We've had around 1,000 total since we've been tracking it. And so our 5-year average is about 1.3-ish breaks per year.
Every time you guys show these I'm just blown away by the granularity of the information we have on the system. It's just unbelievable. It's got to be the envy of like utilities everywhere, if they even know we have it, but I mean.
You know, Mr. Campbell, one thing that I wanted to mention that astounds me is that despite these breaks, so the 100 breaks in the last 5 years, our maintenance crews are able to address these issues with rather minimal like time of outage for our customers. So despite having, 1 to 2 dozen breaks per year affecting a couple of blocks, in each instance, they're able to conduct the work in such a way and respond so quickly that I believe we're keeping our customers' level of service high, and we're not having a lot of backlash due to these issues, and we are trying to address it. But I've personally seen customers be so supportive right there in the community as the repairs happening. They're just kind of bringing our guys water and asking if there's anything else they can do to facilitate the process. So it's been great to see. We have a great crew that helps stand behind our system.
Oh, that's great. And Kathleen, one final, so we have the age, but then we talked about the bedding.
Yep.
Is that 3-foot bedding standard? Is that new, or have we had that standard for decades?
So we've had that standard for decades.
Okay.
The problem with Sterling Park is it was installed before we were an authority, at least the first section was. So we became an authority after this water main was in. We didn't have our standards, like there was no engineering design manual for like 5 more years. So that's why the majority of Sterling Park has no bedding.
Okay,
There weren't any standards.
okay.
Mhm.
But so for all the stuff that's been done for the last number of decades, we don't expect bedding to be an issue for breakage.
It shouldn't be.
Yeah, it'll be something else.
Yes. We gotta
Okay,
figure
great.
it out.
That's great.
Yes. All right. So based on that, knowing we have 70 miles of cast iron pipe in the system, and that majority of that doesn't have very good bedding, that it's failing, it's reaching the age where it needs to be replaced, went through and kind of sorted out where the cast iron is and looked at how it was installed. And so went through those subdivisions and broke them up into projects about 5 miles each. So if we can replace 5 miles a year, we'll have replaced all of the cast iron in about 14 years. And it was installed over 20, and we already know that some of it is beyond the end of its useful life. So we'll just basically keep up with that end of useful life estimate. I think Amelia presented the first 5-year or 5 mile project for design last month before last.
With the dashboard that we have, do we have a sense for how deep this pipe is? Is it relatively shallow? We're not having to dig way down?
Majority of it is about 3 feet deep.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice.
Is that the normal, in today's standards, is that the normal?
Between
Yeah.
3 and 4 feet deep
4
is
feet.
usually where we put it.
We didn't get an extended warranty on this thing.
No. So we were talking about some of those other random breaks out in the rest of the system and where are they coming from. So we have seen some corrosion failures. This map on the left-hand side shows our GIS with the soil corrosivity. So that reddish color is a high corrosion, and you can see the majority of Loudoun County has that highly corrosive soil. But if you look closely, this portion where we're replacing Sugarland Run and Sterling Park don't, which is kind of funny. But the rest of the system, we may have a problem with corrosion in the future. And so we're already having a problem on this one street, Oakdale Court. It's in Countryside. And I think we've had 4 breaks in the last 8 years. And it's a problem because when they go to fix the break, the pipe is so pitted and corroded. When they put the bands on to put the new piece of pipe in, they can't find a spot where they can get a full seal. So it's very corroded. And the problem with this particular site in Countryside, it's much lower than Sterling Park. So in Sterling Park, the pressure is not very high. So when we have a water main break, it's not that much water coming out. On Oakdale Court, when there's a break, the pressure there is usually around 115 PSI. So we could have 500,000 gallons escaping in one break. So we really need to think about and be very direct in where we're replacing pipe. So this one is coming up. I think it's next year's replacement project. But we probably will have more in the future when we start finding these corrosion issues.
How old's this one?
This was installed in probably the 90s, I want to say, early 90s.
Okay.
So not super old.
Oh,
Yeah. But typically, we do not put corrosion measures like cathodic protection on anything smaller than 16-inch. And so this is an 8-inch diameter pipe. So it wouldn't have any corrosion on it typically. Obviously, when we go to replace this, we will put some kind of cathodic protection on it.
are we doing that since so much of the soil is corrosive, are we doing that for the newer projects?
It's still really only 16-inch and larger.
Hmm.
We found that the bolts that they connect the 2 pipes together with, in general, the bolts fail first. So we do put a type of, it's like goop tape that they put around any bolts that are going in the system for any size pipe now. So at least the bolts aren't going to be failing. But in general, we don't.
Does that mean we need to expect all our smaller diameter ductile in 35 years?
Actually, yes.
35 years is not, I mean, that's no 50 years or 100 years. I mean, that's 35. That's a big delta.
Yes.
Oof.
So especially finding the stuff that's in high pressure areas is going to be important.
Yeah.
But we have just recently updated the engineering design manual. I think that's coming to you next couple months.
Okay.
And we did update Appendix E, which is the corrosion section for design.
So are we requiring corrosion protection for all of the pipe we're putting in?
For more of it,
Like what,
12-inch. So the 8-inch pipe will still be.
why not 8? Why not 6?
It's an expense for the contractor.
It's an expense to replace it in 30 years.
Well, Kathleen, on one of the previous slides, did I misread it? But you were talking about how the O'Brien and Gear analysis we did wasn't necessarily drawing direct comparisons with the soil corrosivity.
So in Sterling Park, corrosion is not the issue, and the bedding could help. Now that we have better bedding, it's possible that it will keep the soil away from the pipe so that the corrosion can't interact with it, basically. But we can always change our standards, and that's why the corrosion chapter is an appendix. We can update it more frequently if
Sure.
we feel like we need to.
Yeah, I'm just thinking with all the pipe that's been going in the ground, if that stuff's gonna have to get replaced in 30 or 40 years instead of 100, that's a huge difference. And if we know all this soil's corrosive, how expensive is it to do this corrosion protection? Is that 10 or 20% kind of increase, or is it like a 50 or an 80? I wouldn't
Well,
think it'd be that high, but
It depends on what you do. So like we have polyethylene encasement, which is like a plastic bag basically you put on the pipe, and it gets mixed reviews. If it's not installed properly, it can make the corrosion worse. So yeah, we kind of are trying to do the best that we can. So that's why we went with 12-inch. Maybe we should protect that because it serves more people. So we'll see in the future. The actual galvanic protection is very expensive. So
because you're galvanizing the pipe.
yeah, you're putting anodes on it, test stations, and we have to test them every year, every 5 years. So it's not even just a one-time capital expense, it's a maintenance cost over time as well.
Is it possible to backfill around the pipe with non-corrosive soil? I mean, we're not talking about a huge trench here, 3 feet down, 6-inch pipe, 8-inch pipe, and you just take non-corrosive soils and backfill it around that, some distance, whatever you say,
Proper
5 feet, or I don't know. But just try to keep that corrosive soil away. I don't know. 'Cause that sounds like that would be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I think we've been focused more on the adequate bedding and that being the protective measure. And I think we've been partnering pretty closely with like Fairfax Water, Prince William County, understanding what they're seeing and trying, and with respect to, the galvanic coating or different cathodic protection methodologies. So it's kind of this period of continual, trying the technologies and understanding, who's ready to adopt those as their standards, and weighing the transition of that into our standards with, the expense on the development industry. And, of course, we have to think the long term of this infrastructure. But those are all of the things that the team, I believe, is strongly evaluating.
Do Fairfax and Prince William have the same soils?
Yeah.
Same
Yeah, generally
corrosivity?
speaking, yeah.
Mhm. Is this like high shrink swell clay kind of stuff? Was it the clays?
It's like the red clay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, but we got 1,500 miles of water main, and so if that's not making it to 100 years and it's making it to 50, I mean, that seems like that's a pretty big difference in again, maybe we're all dead, but that's a big difference for somebody out, some decades.
I'm wondering too, my impression, correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the empirical data, like you were seeing on the dashboard and in this particular snapshot that's shown on the right-hand side of this slide, is sort of pockets of issues on the ductile, so the more recently installed mains. So that's sort of our empirical data of, it's not necessarily a widespread corrosivity issue in those areas of newer pipe. So that's what we want to continue to watch.
Yeah, and this is just like a grand overview. So
Sure.
there's a lot of like melding. So the soils might not be as bad as the picture shows in
Okay.
general. Because we're only really seeing these failures in pockets, like you said, like Countryside is starting to become an issue. But we haven't really seen much corrosion anywhere else.
But, and is that, when you say we haven't seen corrosion, meaning we're looking at pipe and seeing like little bits of pitting as opposed to corrosion, like this pipe broke, we dug it up and we go, oh, it's all
Yeah,
corroded.
Huge hole.
Right.
Right, yeah,
Because I wouldn't expect, so much of the system's so new, you wouldn't expect
to see it yet.
at least the leaks and breaks yet. I suppose you could dig it up and see the initial corrosion taking place.
Yeah. And we listen to 400 miles of pipeline a year to see if we can hear any leaks, and that would be ductile and cast.
Sure.
So we're only finding like 10 to 12 leaks a year. And those are mainly on hydrants. So we're really not seeing big issues yet.
But we wouldn't expect to have leaks from corrosion this early. If all the pipe is corroding, we wouldn't expect, even with that, we wouldn't expect, I would assume, to have leaks and breaks this early, because it's just such new pipe, right? Or wrong?
Well, you could, so when we put in galvanic cathodic protection, the anode bags only last 15 to 20 years. So
Okay.
those are corroding at a pretty fast rate.
So that gives us an indication of what would be happening if we didn't
If-
have
right.
those in place.
Yes,
And they're corroding at a 15 to 20-year clip?
yes.
Oof. Man, okay. Well, maybe this is something I'm sure we'll talk more about this in the future, but, okay, great.
So some of the things that we're doing, I was talking about leak detection. So that's the nodes that we put on the hydrants that listen all the time, and then the 400 miles a year that we walk around and listen to. We're looking at our air relief vacuum combo valves and making sure that they're clean and actually working. So that's helping us extend the lifespan of that pipe. The cathodic protection we talked about. And then we're also doing valve exercising. So I talked about how the valves were important. The valve exercising, basically it'll check how many turns it takes to open or close a valve, the torque necessary to do so. So you can make sure that what's in our system is correct for the size and that it's actually holding all the way and not leaking any. And then we also have our yearly hydrant flushing program, which isn't on the slide, but we go through the system and flush every hydrant once a year to make sure that it's working, and to clean out the system. So all of these things are kind of helping us take care and maintain the linear water system. So next steps for the water side, we are going to expand the acoustic listening system. So we just installed another 77 acoustic listening nodes this week. And like I was saying, we just updated our corrosion standards. So we're creating a training program so that our land development and capital engineers have a better understanding of what we're trying to install and why. And hopefully that'll help us in the future with all of this ductile iron. That's it for water. So gravity sewer is the other big linear system that we have in the ground. So we have about 1,000 miles of gravity main. It's slightly older than the water system. We have about 54 miles of force main. And you can see down here on this map, we are showing the different colors represent the different materials. So orange is asbestos, green is PVC, and this purpley color is reinforced concrete pipe. And then again, on the graph, you can see when it was installed. So it's very similar to the cast iron, ductile iron. Obviously, the sewer gets installed around the same time as the water in these subdivision projects. So we have a similar curve. So with the history of the rehab on the gravity system, we have again done 3 distinct sewer lining projects. 2 were done in Cabin Branch 10 years ago, and 1 was done last summer in a bunch of different sheds to hit our worst pipes. Total, we've lined about 12 miles of sewer main. That's mainly because of the Cabin Branch projects that we did. And Cabin Branch is in Sterling Park. So it's both the water and the sewer that we need to maintain out there. So we've done those contractor-led projects, but we also can do some in-house fixes as well. So this top left picture is showing you how we can do our short liner installation, which is basically a 2-foot piece of fiberglass that we put epoxy resin on. And we put it on this tube, which is it's kind of this black tube here. And then put this into the sewer to wherever the defect is. We line it up, and then they can blow up that tube, and it pushes the fiberglass against the outside of the pipe and fixes the defect and allows sewer to flow through still. So we don't have to shut anyone down while we're doing this fix. The only problem with doing those is we don't have the ability to cut out the laterals for the holes in the main. So we can only do them when the defect is farther from a lateral that we won't impede it. So the picture in the top right is one of the contractors going back and cutting out a lateral after they lined the pipe. So they have a special machine that they can do that with. And then these 2 pictures on the bottom, this is just TV. So this is our CCTV imagery. We go with a camera in the gravity sewer and video it. So this is just concrete sloughing off the inside of this pipe. So it needs to be lined so all of this debris doesn't clog our main. And then this one is more typical of the defects that we're seeing now. This water spouting out here is not supposed to be there. So this is a asbestos concrete main and a cast iron lateral that's connecting to it. That's where we're seeing most of these defects. And so this water is getting in between the two because the cast iron is starting to degrade. So what we found is in order to fix this properly, we need to line basically around the main and up into the lateral. But we don't want to do that until we've lined the main, because otherwise you would still have a gap. So we've been adding projects to line the mains of these places where we have the connection problems. So then eventually we can go back and line that lateral and fix the problem, fix the water getting in. So we've installed over 180 of those short liners in our system. So we've done a lot. We've done as many as we pretty much can. And moving forward, we're going to try this year to grout some of these problems. while we wait for the lining to occur. So we're hoping we can push grout into this annular space and stop the water from coming in
From the inside.
from the inside.
Is it like a hydraulic cement kind of thing? How do you do that when it's wet?
Yes, they can't do it if it's too much, if it's gushing too hard, like if the flow rate is too high. But for something like this, I think they should be able to push it in. It's similar to the picture on top where they have a tube basically, and then they have from the other side, they have the gun coming in, and so then they can squish it out.
And what's our success with the fiberglass bin? How does that stay stuck to the interior? Does over time, does it start to lose its adherence?
For the most part, they have been staying up pretty well. We've had a couple that have failed that we've had to come and line over, but for the most part, they're staying up pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah, the fiberglass, I mean, you can see some fringing coming off, but
Is it just, so it's an epoxy? It's like an adhesive?
yeah, they take a sheet of fiberglass, like just fabric, and then they slather this goop on it and then wrap it around the tube.
Does the pipe have to get abraded before the epoxy goes on it so that you get good adherence? I imagine you've got all kinds of stuff.
They usually clean it beforehand, which is just basically running a water jet down
Okay.
to clean it, but pretty much everywhere we've installed short liners is asbestos cement, so it's already pretty
Yeah.
granular.
Yeah. Okay, great.
All right, so the goals for the sewer rehab project is to prevent sanitary sewer overflows. So we've done a pretty good job of not having sanitary sewer overflows in our system. But obviously we want to keep that from happening in the future. We want to reduce I&I, which is water coming into the pipe, not water coming out of the pipe. And that helps us because then we don't have to treat it downstream, either at Blue Plains or at Broad Run. And then maintain level of service for our customers so we don't have to tell them that they can't use water. So those are the main goals for this program. And this year we created a fancy GIS dashboard for the sewer as well. And this is really cool because we can see where the defects are. So when they go out and they do their CCTV inspection, and they find a place where there's water coming in or there's a crack or something, they stop, they look at it, and then they grade how bad the defect is. And so that's on a 1 to 5 scale, 5 being the worst. So we got our GIS team to figure out how to get those defects out of our CCTV program and put it into GIS. So the red lines, so that's a pipe segment. Red would be a level 5 defect. Orange would be a 4, yellow is 3, etc. So now we can kind of view them in a map. So when we go to get our projects together, we can see, oh, here is where all the problems are. This is where we need to focus our efforts. And the other thing that they added to this map was the green highlight. I don't know if you can see, but this pipe looks a little bit different than this pipe. That's because that is the section that we've lined before. So we can see where we've lined, we can see where the defects are, and kind of put everything together to get our projects ready. So this area, this is Cabin Branch. This is one of the big projects that we lined previously. And all of these defects are due to those lateral connections coming in. So we know we've got to go back and fix that. And I think that's pretty much it. So our rehab strategy right now is we started 2 years ago, I think, a flush then TV program. So what they do is they go through and they clean the sewer, and then they wait about a month, and then they TV it. And that's so that the sewer doesn't have as many spider webs or stuff to get stuck on the glass. You can see the pipe a lot better. But we wait a month because we were finding when they go through and clean it, they cut all the roots out. So we were waiting a little bit of time to let the roots grow back so we can see them easier if they're there.
That's smart.
Yep. So as we go through and look at these different sewer sheds, we're starting to program in the projects that we need, that we find when we do the work. But there are some problems that we can't fix with lining. So some of those problems include if there's a belly in the pipe. So if the pipe doesn't have a flat slope, if it's got a weird divot in it. We can't fix that with lining. We have to remove it, replace it, either the portion of that segment or the whole thing. Or if there's a gusher, like this picture in the center, that's a gusher. So they wouldn't be able to line that. They'd have to grout it first if they could. And if not, we just have to remove it and replace it. So there is a project right now going on. It'll go to construction probably beginning of next year. That is replacing some pipe that one has a belly, one is this deformed pipe where something's sticking out into it. So hopefully we'll see how that goes. That'll be our first replacement one that we've done. Well, actually not. We have the East Beach sewer that just got completed. So that was a pipe replacement that was due to the creek being there, not necessarily the pipe being bad. And then the one on Moran Road where the bottom of the pipe got eaten out. So we've done those two. So the Shepherd one is the one that's coming up. And then we have another one on the CIP for a large diameter sewer replacement that we couldn't line. So we have to do something different.
For a bulge, what's the kind of thing that causes that?
I think a rock, but
Okay.
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Guess we're gonna find out. So we've also done some other interesting rehabs. This one was just an interesting project we thought you'd like to hear about. So we did a large diameter sewer inspection and we found that this pipe, I think it's 42-inch, this gasket was supposed to be up here in this joint and it was falling off and every single gasket was falling out. And so then it was falling in the pipe and causing backups. So we hired this company to come in and physically go into that sewer and cut away all the gaskets and rip it out. So this guy went in full scuba gear and went down into the sewer and just scooted along the bottom and pulled out all this stuff.
It's pretty wild.
Yep. Very
He
interesting.
did he have a hose coming for his, it doesn't look like he's got much
Yeah.
of a tank on.
Yeah, he's got a hose for columns, for air,
Yeah.
lights.
It wouldn't fit with the tank.
No, well, that's right. Those cave divers, they get in some really tight spaces and they got air on, but looks like he's got a hose.
It was pretty cool.
That's pretty wild.
Mhm. So other things we're doing for gravity sewer, obviously CCTV, we're looking at I&I wherever we can, stopping it, the flushing program that we've got going. And then also I'm doing some sewer flow monitoring to try and pinpoint where we should be looking a little bit harder, seeing where the I&I is coming from. And then we're gonna embark on the lateral lining and grouting program that I was talking about. So lots of things for sewer as well.
Are water mains and sewer lines anywhere near each other? Reason I'm asking, parts of India, they're right next to each other and they're leaking
Into each other?
into each other. The sewer is leaking into the water, so you don't drink the water
No,
in parts of India, you know?
the standard by VDH is 10 feet separation. So they're close, but they're not that close. So next steps for our sewer, we're looking at this manhole inspection technology. I didn't talk at all about manholes. Right now, we're just lifting lids and looking in, seeing what we can see. In the future, we hope to get some kind of camera that we can have a video like we do for the sewer to check out our manholes. And then we're going to be working on our force main condition assessment. So that's the pipe coming from pump stations to gravity sewer, looking at what's the condition of that and do we need to be doing any maintenance on those as well. So key takeaways, we're moving ahead with all these programs. We're getting a lot of data, but we may have to change things in the future. We'll see how it goes. Our water main replacement schedule is pretty critical for the cast iron so that we can reduce the number of breaks that we're seeing. And any planned work that we can do is vastly less expensive than any emergency repair that we get into. And the other thing I wanted to say is that everyone at Loudon Water needs to be thinking about asset management, and they're doing a great job. Inspections, maintenance, engineering, everybody is really thinking about this and putting it all together. That was it.
Thank you. Great presentation.
Excellent.
And
Thank
I
you.
agree, getting out in front of this stuff is huge, even if we don't want to deal
Oh,
on
yeah.
some of these things, but being proactive is huge.
Yeah.
So I think that'll save us a ton of money. It'd be interesting to do a sensitivity. We've got our 100-year plan that's fuzzy and whatever, but what if all that infrastructure's lasting 50 years instead of 100 because it's all corroding? None of us know. There's no way to know, but you know, that all of a sudden has a big impact on things. Thank you, Kathleen. That was great.
Are you still on? Still there?
I'm here.
Any questions, Terry?
No, let me just echo Brett's comments once again. It's good that we're ahead of this and we're thinking about it. Because, you know, time goes by a lot faster than you think. So good job.
Presentation, but I think some of this, and cut it down a little bit to let the board know about this. I think it's a good piece of information for them to know. You know, I mean, all of it's very good. It might just be too long for a full board meeting, but I think some of it would be very helpful for them to know that we're being proactive, we're ahead of it. And it's failing and not failing and why, and corrosive soils, and it's good to know. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? I think that is to the end. Are we through the agenda?
We are.
Next meeting is September 25th. So thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Well done. Jessica. Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
We're done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
For the long weekend.
Yeah, enjoy the long weekend. Absolutely.
Thanks, everybody.
How many days are weekends now? What day is it?